Give him the forecast.
Omega level threat detected.
Ancient sands, heed my command and reclaim these relics of hatred!
Miss Sealy-Smith, thank you so much for joining. So we're going to hop right into the questions. So you were born in Barbados and then moved to Canada. Can you tell me a little bit about living in Barbados?
Okay, so I didn't leave Barbados until I was almost 18. And the reason that I left was that I came up to go to university. And coming from a small island, I had my heart set on going to a university in a big city. Except that my father had gone to Mount Allison University in Sackville, New Brunswick, Canada. He named me after the university.
Wow!
So despite all of my protestations, my father said, but that way you're going though. So that's that's where I ended up going, was to Mount Allison University in Sackville, New Brunswick. And that was my introduction to Canada. And it was while I was there, so it wasn't theater school, it wasn't film school, it was 1977. Wasn't anybody thinking about being a professional actor from Barbados. But when I went to university, that's what I fell in love with. I started doing this. They didn't even have a theater department, but they had professors who were interested in putting on plays, and I did them. I did plays in French. I did Jacques dans les Earth by UNESCO, and I did Spanish plays in Spanish, and I did For Colored Girls Who Have Considered Suicide When the Rainbow Was Enough. Except, there were only, I don't think there were seven of us at the whole university, so they had to. I think we did it with only like three people, but I was bitten by the acting bug. I think I knew from the time I was about 8 that that's what I was going to do, except that it didn't formulate until I went to university, and
Give
then
me
I left
1
there.
second. Sorry about that. I just was checking in background noise. That's incredible. You hitchhiked to Toronto?
Yeah, we hitchhiked to Toronto. I had this dream that I really wanted to be an actor, so we left and I came to Toronto, and luckily nobody told me that it was an impossible dream.
Oh my
Because
God.
if I'd known that, 80% of actors live below the poverty line,
Yeah.
and in terms of earnings from their craft, waitressing is another thing, but if you're talking about the monies, realized from their craft, then they lived below the poverty line. But nobody told me that it was going to be really hard for a little black girl from Barbados with a Barbadian accent to find work in Toronto. I remember when I finally found something called the Black Theatre Canada. And I went to them and I thought, okay, I found them. I found the people. I found the people who are going to hire me because I know I'm a good actor. And they gave me that awful thing that we say to young people all the time. Sorry, but you don't have any experience. And you're going, but I'm not going to get any experience
How do you
unless
get
you give me
experience
a
if you
chance
don't?
to get the experience. So anyway, it was one of those things that was just meant to happen because I was looking for a job. I walked into a labor office. I mean, in those days, it was politically incorrect, but you are talking 1980. So it was called the Manpower Office. And it was basically where you went in to find,
Find
jobs
work.
that you could do, not your
Right.
career, but jobs. And I walk into this place to look for a job, selling whatever, retail, whatever, answering phones. I just needed a job. And there was a little ad that said actor wanted. And they said that they were forming Canada's first multicultural neighborhood community theater. And they were looking for actors. And, I went, and that was it. I got my first paid acting job in 1981, and I haven't stopped.
Oh my God. This is incredible. You are so inspiring. Hitchhiking, running around, like you said, nobody told you that it was going to be hard and all these things, and you just stuck
So I
with
just
it.
did it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You just stick with it. And that's so I see now the transition from psychology, but like you said, you were bitten by the bug. So you just knew you had to do it. That's so cool.
Yes. And I mean, psychology was only because the reason I did psychology is twofold. One, I do find the psychology of human beings. I find it interesting. I find people
Of course.
fascinating. I don't, I'm quite antisocial, so I don't spend a lot of time around people, but I like studying them. I think they're an aberrant, people who sort of live outside of the psychological norm.
Yeah.
I find them really fascinating as well. But the other reason I did psychology was because I won a Barbados scholarship, right? We go to school in Barbados.
Hmm.
Back in those bad old days, we used to send all of our our exams were set by universities in England, Oxford and Cambridge.
Hmm.
We sat our exams and we sent our exams away to be marked by our professors at Harvard and Cambridge. I mean, at Oxford and Cambridge, and we win scholarships based
Hmm.
on merit, how
Hmm.
you do in the exam. So I was a Barbados scholar. I got a full scholarship to go, but my parents wanted me to stay in Barbados. So
Hmm.
I went looking. And back in 1977, one of the few things that was not offered at the University of the West Indies was, you
Hmm.
guessed it,
Yep.
psychology.
Psychology. Yep.
Therefore, that was what I really, really, really wanted to do, which means that I really, 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 really had to leave the island. I really had to go away. I had to get off the rock. It was going to happen. I had to get off the rock.
I had to get off the
So
rock.
yeah. Yes, those were the two reasons. One, yes, it was kind of interesting, but two, but I wanted to do something that I knew wasn't offered at UE because I just felt like I wanted off for a
Yeah.
bit. I wanted
Yeah.
to see what else was out there. And it was when I was at university seeing what else was out there, um, I realized that this is what I wanted to do. But that was not there's knowing and there's knowing, right?
Yeah.
There's knowing here, and then there's a knowing that is
Knowing
in
here.
in is in other parts of your body, and
Hmm.
in the other parts of my body, but it hadn't reached my frontal lobe yet. In the other parts of my body, I knew that performing was my thing from the time I was 8 years old. I went to the Ursuline convent. It was quite strict. It was run by nuns. And one day I was always a bit of a loner. I couldn't play jacks. I hated skipping. I was afraid of the rope. So I sort of lived in my own head, and I found my
Yeah.
own head an extremely interesting place. So that's where I stayed. And then one day, some of the stuff that was in my head, I guess, started to come out. I have no idea what I did. Apparently, I cavorted and jumped. I can't dance. Couldn't dance then, can't dance now. I sang. I
So there's
recited nursery
no jumping
rhymes.
could do
I
anything
performed.
for you, right?
Yeah. There was nobody there. I was just doing it. It was just coming out of me. And of course, what that does is that it gathers people. So by the
Yeah.
time I sort of looked up, it was just like kids, 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 kids. And they're all sitting there watching me going, "What? Was she really doing it?" So, and I realized that I loved that power. I loved the power of making people look at me and holding them there. And I discovered that power when I was 8. But of course, I had no idea what to do
What
with
it
that
was.
power.
Yeah.
I'm 8 years old, and you're in Barbados, so you got to do doctor, lawyer, accountant, or something. And it just would not occur to me.
Yes.
But I first tapped into that ability to connect an audience when I was 8, and then it sort of blossomed when I was in university, And then I hitchhiked to Toronto and did it.
That
Did it.
is
They used to ask me all the time because, of course, I achieved a certain measure of success on the stage in Toronto.
a
And
certain measure. You achieved a
everybody,
lot of measure, a lot. Do not be
so
humble so much.
everybody assumed that I'd been to theater school. I mean, I used to get introduced. I mean, in Barbados, where academia is everything, I am
Yes.
constantly being introduced as Dr. Alison Sealy-Smith, and I gotta go, yo, I got my BA. That's about it. And then in Canada, what happened was I would get introduced to audience as a graduate of the National Theatre School. And you'd go, a BA from Mount Allison University in Sac Brunswick. That's it.
That's
So,
incredible. So why do you think there is such a push for, like you said in Barbados, it is lawyer, doctor, teacher. Why don't we encourage the youth to be actors, actresses, artists? Why don't we have the same merit? Why don't we hold the same merit for lawyers and doctors for artists? Because artists are equally as important.
of course. And why don't we? Because of our history, because
Mm,
because in a post-colonial polity, the way to get out of poverty is to go to school. And that
yeah,
was ingrained
yeah,
deep. And that was real. That's not pretend.
yeah.
That's real. This that I'm saying this island because I'm currently in Barbados, but yeah, this island dragged itself out
Yes.
of the darkness of slavery, the huge oppression of what was a colonial state, right up until 1966. We did that, and the part of the reason we did that was through education. Um, we had free education. Barbados still has, as a
Yes.
tiny, tiny little nation,
Still has.
tiny nation.
Still
You
has.
go to school from nursery to tertiary
Yep.
free in
Yep.
Barbados. So we put great stock in it. And the problem is that we haven't moved forward. So I understand where it comes from. I know that all of
Mm.
the positions, if you were looking at this place in 1920 something or whatever it is, every single doctor, lawyer, whatever would have been white from England.
From
And
England.
that Yes. So in a
Yeah.
couple of generations, we had a lot of work to do if this whole independence thing that happened in 1966, if that was really going to work, we needed educated people to take over all of this stuff, both in the private and the public sector. So I understand that. I understand why a doctor in the family, an accountant in the family, a lawyer in the family was something to be deeply wished and yearned for. I understand why, people my father was one of those where the family didn't have much money. And so he was going to be the savior. He was the bright one, the
Mm-hmm.
smart one. He
Mm-hmm.
was the one that get the extra piece of meat on Sunday. If there wasn't
Mm-hmm.
enough meat for everybody, he get some. Because the family's hopes were kind of pinned on
On
him a
him.
bit, right?
Yep.
So yes, he went off and did his master's in engineering, but I understand that push towards the academic because it was a means to an end. Um, in return, and so in your question, we're very pragmatic and practical in Barbados. We sort of have to have been to have survived the way
Yeah.
that we have. And for the longest time, being an actress or an actor, a singer, a sound engineer, a lot of that stuff didn't make any sense because you couldn't make any money. There was no industry. Some of that is changing. It's changing really slowly. Attitudes are changing. And you
Yeah.
know how it changed first? It changed through academia because while it might not be practical, still not practical to be an actor in Barbados, you can now get your master's in it.
Yep.
You can go to the Arrow Barrow Center for Creative Imagination and you can get your first degree. You can hop over to the larger, the Faculty of Culture. You can do your master's in cultural studies. So On the one hand, there is this sort of acknowledgement that this is it's an art form, it's a skill set, it is a profession. That's there. That wasn't there in my day at all.
Yeah.
It's there now. There's a lot of lip service that is paid by politicians of every single ilk, every single letter in the alphabet. They all say the same thing, and they talk about, putting the money behind the creative industries because they're going to be the pillar of blah 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 blah. Part of it is you're talking economies of size, and there just isn't. There
Mm-hmm.
is room in Barbados for a lot more. A
A
lot
lot.
more.
A lot
There
more.
is
Yes.
room for, yes, there is room for a lot more, and people are fighting to do it, and it is improving. And I just don't want to, as sad and as dismal and as hopeless as it sometimes feels for creatives in Barbados, I just I just don't want it to be hopeless. I know that I have seen change. I know that I've seen change in attitudes. I know that I've seen change in, but part of the problem is that Barbados has always, all of the Caribbean islands, they've always managed to ship out. We export
Yeah.
talent. We
Yeah.
export intellect. We export skills because there's always been this understanding that we don't have a big enough market to employ or make an industry out of the things. It's just getting harder and harder to move from one jurisdiction to another. So I get asked all the time, what is it that people in Barbados have to do to be able to break into voice acting in Canada or whatever? And the first thing is you got to get a work permit. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
it's just saying, yeah,
Yeah.
right. And you're coming into an industry that is so cutthroat competitive, you know?
Competitive.
There are
Competitive.
hundreds and hundreds of
Hundreds.
actors for every
Every
role,
role.
and all of them have the talent. So here you gonna come with you little Bajan self,
With your accent. Don't forget the accent.
and with your accent, and figure you going to New York, cause you know Daria, and Daria's do things. So you gonna stay by Daria in New York, and
Yup.
you gonna become a voice actor,
Yup.
and then you feel terrible for having to puncture dreams
Yeah.
because it doesn't work like that in unfortunately my story is an anomaly. People are no more going to suddenly leave Barbados tomorrow and come up to Toronto or New York or LA and suddenly get fantastic projects to work on. That's about as likely to happen as that you're going to become a billionaire like Rihanna.
Yeah.
Yeah, we come from Barbados. Yeah, Rihanna did it big time, but you notice there hasn't been another one.
There hasn't. And I've
It's an
been,
anomaly.
yeah,
She is her own
entity.
phenomenon.
She
Um,
she took her music career and just
mine happened, and
boom.
my stuff didn't happen just because I have talent. I was born with it. It
Of course.
showed at 8. I have some skills that I've managed to amass over the years. I can be extremely lazy, but when it comes to my art form, I have a very solid work ethic because I just like to get stuff
Get
done.
stuff done.
And I will still say that some of the success that I have enjoyed has been right place, right time, and that it could have
Mm.
happened, that it just didn't happen for me.
Mm-hmm.
There were a lot of things that were happening that came together for me. When I was in Toronto, the theater as a tool for social change was a big thing in the early 80s.
Yes.
That's where I got my work because you didn't have to have a degree from theater school in order to do a play about spousal assault, or that it's bad to have a lot of homeless people, or you really shouldn't be racist, or all of that kind of stuff. the work that I was doing in the 80s in theater. And so that's where I got my on the job training. But that doesn't happen for everybody.
Yeah.
Right now, it doesn't matter. There's not that many people using theater as a tool for social change. The other thing that happened was that right at that time, more women, white women obviously, but more women were assuming positions of leadership within the theater industry in Canada.
Okay.
I got I got hired twice from, to get onto the big main stages. The
Hmm.
reason I got onto the big main stages was because women were either directing for the first time or they were artistic director for the first time. And they went, that's a cool energy that I want. That's a cool energy that I want. And I'm going to put it on the stage. And I'm going to let her do Shakespeare, even though she's never studied Shakespeare. So, is that going to happen for everybody that you're there right at that time where there's this huge surge of feminine energy moving through the big stages of Canada? And I happen to be there at the right
Your
time. And the
time.
women go, it doesn't happen. So I'm an anomaly. And um, people are going to have to find their own way to do it to get that thing, but they're
Yeah.
not. The route that I took is, again, just like walking into the manpower office and finding a little card that said actor wanted. I swear this was just meant to be,
Be.
and it
Yeah.
just goes clunk, 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 and falls into place. Weirdest thing. I gotta. I'm gonna have to plug in my.
Sure, not a problem. Let me. Okay, we press play. Okay, we're good. So let's talk a little bit about your role as Storm. First of all, thank you. You are the reason why I'm here. I saw X-Men as a kid, and that turned me into a nerd immediately. Like watching X-Men with my mom and my aunt, the Dark Phoenix saga, seeing Storm being Storm. She's the goddess of the elements. She just commands everything. Man, I watched X-Men. I'm like, oh, I'm a mutant. Oh, okay. Like it just made sense to me. So thank you. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for
Okay.
being Storm. But tell me what was that like when you auditioned as Storm? I'm so curious.
Um, it was weird because it was just when those things that we just talked about, they were just starting to happen. So I was just making the move from a poor struggling actor who was doing street theater and theater in church basements and theater in parks and theater in community centers, and yes, we got some good gigs because we were hired by the government to do certain things, but very much still in that mode of theater for social change. And I wanted to do theater. And it was just starting to happen. And I was out in Stratford and I was doing Shakespeare on the main stage. And all of a sudden, my agent calls me and tells me, look, I need you to take your day off and go into Toronto. And, oh, I only get one day off. And yeah, no, you should go for this thing, and it's animation. What's animation? You mean like cartoons? You want me to audition for a cartoon? Honey, I don't do Scooby Doo. I don't, my Yogi Bear is not good. Uh, I don't read comics. I didn't know anything about this thing. They
Wow.
called it Project X.
So you were flying
They called it
blind.
Project X at the time. I'm not a comic book person. I don't know anything about this stuff. When I walked in, they didn't say anything about X-Men. They called it Project X. Apparently, some people guessed. I didn't have a clue. The truth was, if they'd said the words Wolverine, I would have been animal with sharp claws. Um, Gambit. Isn't that a ploy or a plot or a trick? I, I did not know. I did not know. Did not know. So I go in there and I'm a little bit impatient because I have driven all the way in from Stratford, so that's a 2-hour drive.
Damn.
It's my day off. I'm a serious actress, just breaking through into the mainstream.
Mhm.
So the last thing I need to be doing right now is
It's
Scooby
cleaning.
Doo. Okay. So anyway, but it's work, and I need work, and I go in, and it's not what I expect. The lines are not where I am at in my head, which is, Scooby Doo, Roadrunner time. And I remember not being sure. They were throwing things at me. She was. I heard that she originally came from the continent. She was from Africa. Great, this is cool. Except that when I walk into the audition, there's about 5 Black actresses in there. Every single one of them is from the continent, all points of the compass of the continent, and they're on their 3rd callback.
Oh.
This is my first time in. All
Oh.
I knew was that there was no way I was going into that place and doing any kind of African accent, because my colleagues were waiting out there, and this was their 3rd time being called back. If you want an African accent, it's right there, and those actresses are really, really good. They're good. What am I doing here? What am I doing here? I don't know. And they finally threw out a word amidst all of this. You heard, rooster? No, you
Yes.
missed it. Oh.
We edit out. We edit out.
Okay. It's fun. But oh gosh, what was I talking about now?
The
The
African
rooster threw me
was
off. Right. So there are all of these other actresses out there. Um, and so I go in, and they're throwing all these different words at me, and for some reason they're not connecting. And finally they said, "She's a queen."
Mm.
I can do that.
Mm-hmm.
I
You
know
can do that.
how to do that. Give me the lines, let me say them. I can do queen. And that was it. That was, and apparently it worked for them. And I found myself telling people, because it's starting to come together in my head. I really do think that my Caribbean background helped a lot. And it is because we can get quite formal.
Very, very formal.
We can get, and as a Barbadian especially, we are meticulously formal.
Yes.
There is a way that things are done. There is a how to everything, and a when, and so on. So
Yes.
that played into it. I know it did. If you ever see a lot of Caribbean theater, it tends to be quite presentational. It's
Mm-hmm.
out there. We relate this way. We
Yes.
don't do a
Yes.
lot of
No.
I am, examining myself very
It's
quietly and digging into
it
my navel.
like you
It
said,
is
outward. Yeah. Yeah.
drama. We like a piece of drama.
Yes.
So, given my Caribbean heritage, and given the fact that I was doing Shakespeare at the time,
Mm-hmm.
it just sort of
Lined up.
came together, and there she was. There she was.
That's incredible. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah, and when you say queen, I'm like, yeah, she's a queen. She gives. I'm the
Yes.
queen. I'm the goddess of the elements. Yeah,
Yes.
that makes
Yes.
perfect sense.
She says it. She says it. And I mean, as a theater person, I mean, my background comes from theater. It doesn't come from film.
Right.
So, and on stage, and even as a theater actress, I'm kind of a big actress. I'm a dramatic actress. Um, and so, and come on, Storm is as theatrical as they come. I mean,
She
she
came
is a
in
drama queen.
lightning. She said, "I'm here. I need you guys to
I'm
notice
here.
I'm here."
I'm calling. Excuse me, everybody back off. because I'm going to be calling in some desert sands. Okay, everybody, here we go. And so it worked for me. It really worked. It this is it. It felt sometimes when I'm standing in the studio and I'm doing my I am Storm, mistress of the elements. You go, this is what this instrument was made for,
Yeah.
right? If I'm not on stage and if I'm going to be doing voice acting, then this is the kind of voice acting that I should be doing, because everything that I am and everything that I've done thus far sort of comes together in it.
That's incredible. I can't even imagine seeing you in the studio just doing everything because of your personality. And you said you're a big actress. I think watching you be a voice actress is probably synonymous with watching you on stage, because you are acting. It's not just a voice
I
role
work
to you.
it.
Yeah.
I work it in that studio. I can keep my head, on the mic, but the rest of it is going and doing and and the fight sequences. Oh, girl, you don't want to see me in there
I
fighting.
would not Miss Allison out here fighting.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
I love it. I absolutely love it. That is so cool. That's I wanted to, like, I need to see a recording of you fighting. That is so cool. Did you have any idea of like the impact you would have on generations, and especially, on people like me who grew up watching X-Men? Did you realize, in that moment, I'm gonna
None,
wow.
none. I always thought, I, you know, I, I had no idea. I had absolutely no idea. At the time that I was doing it, like I said, remember, I'm young, I've got two kids, I'm supporting by myself. My career is just coming together. I've got a lot to prove, right? I'm
Mhm.
from Barbados.
Tiny
I
island.
don't live all right. I don't this culture that I'm in is not the culture. I was almost 18 by the time I left. So I was who I was. I came with all of my Barbadianness. It wasn't something that I have to reach back, or I gotta, remember, or I
Yeah.
gotta look at my family to say, yeah, 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 that's in me. This is who I am. And so it's just been, I don't know, I didn't realize at the time that this was going to be part of my legacy. Would never have known at the time. Even when I realized, I tell people it's the first time I realized, started to realize how big X-Men really was it was a few years after. I think X-Men may even have come to an end by then. And I've got a small part in some film or the other. So we're shooting. I've got my couple of days. And somehow word got around. I must have talked to somebody who talked to somebody who talked to somebody. The actress who voiced Storm was on set. You gotta see IATSE crew. Now these are men who've been working these shows, these setups for ages. They have seen every star that ever was. The big stars, the little stars, the wannabe stars. They've seen them all.
Mhm.
They are very blasé, kind of jaded. They just do their work. They're not into this thing.
Mhm.
All of a sudden, I see men put down lights, stop hauling cable, and come cross by me to shake my hand. And they're like, wow, holy bad word. It's Storm. It's Storm. Oh my God. And I'm like standing there going,
Uh
this stuff, like, it's kind of big.
Not kind of big.
And remember, because then the joke is that I don't really do too much more voice work. I do little bits here
Right.
and
Yeah,
there.
yeah,
But
yeah.
at this point, I am worried about making sure that I leave a legacy. And for me, what that I've got to form this theater, because that's how I'm going to have legacy. So the rest of after 1997, when this came to an end for a little while, I started working with a bunch of other Black performers in Toronto on the Obsidian Theatre Company.
Yes.
And we worked on that. Was my life, my passion. That was everything, because part of it was I knew that theater was this thing that kind of, it comes and it goes, there's no
Mm-hmm.
record of it. And
Mm-hmm.
this is still my career. This is all I'm really thinking about. All that other stuff is about giving me the financial foundation so that I can do what is my
Bread and butter.
addiction, which is live theater. So, and to me, it's just funny that that's what I was focused on. Was I wanted to create legacy. I didn't want to be just here and gone. Oh, you should have seen her. She was a good actress. I wanted something to live on after me. And I thought that was the theater company. And at that point, little did I know, yes, it's going to be the theater company, because the theater company is still going strong
Of course.
22 years later,
Of course.
24
Yes.
years later, but that it was going to be X-Men, and that my grandchildren were going to be able to see this thing, that my legacy was going to be the portrayal of this wonderful, righteous, awesomely powerful Black woman who tried desperately to do the right thing all the time, who had the power to control the basic elements of the weather, the primal elements of the weather. Somebody was going to be an omega level threat,
Mega
you
level.
know. Um, and I want them to be able to see a Black woman do that. I want to be able to see them see a Black woman do that, to have all of that power and still be able to maintain this amazing self-control. Because sometimes I swear, if it was really Alison Sealy-Smith who was Storm, and I had them kind of powers, and I met up on some of the injustices and inequities in this world, and I let that rage that bubbles in a lot of us ever come out, I would have drowned this world. I would have drowned it.
You
But she
are
doesn't.
you are
She
so
doesn't. She doesn't do
strong
that.
too. From hearing, you say you came from such a tiny island, hitchhike your way to Toronto. You knew what you wanted to do and you stuck with it. You are Storm. It's not you like you. Yes, you're her voice actress, but you are the epitome of a strong woman, a strong Black woman, a strong West Indian woman. West Indian women, we don't have time for games. We see it, we want it, we
No.
go after it.
Go
Yeah.
after it. Go after it. We weren't told, I guess, America, the US styles itself as the land of opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody calls the Caribbean the
The land of
wellspring of opportunity. You know what I mean? If
yeah,
you want it, you got to go out there and you got to get it. And yes, but remember, like I said, strength is one thing, and skill and talent and
yeah.
hard work. But I did also benefit from, there were shoulders that I stood on. There were Black women who had gone before me. There were and not just Black women, there were those white women who put me in the right place at the right time so that I could even get an agent, so that somebody took me seriously enough to say, there's this X project that they want you to go on audition for. And it was my very first animation. I'd never auditioned for animation. I'd never done voiceovers before I did this X-Men thing. So yes, there's strength, and there's all that, and there's luck. Luck still exists. You
Love still
still need
exists.
it sometimes, but there's also those who went before.
Yeah.
um And that's everything from, like I said, from the black women who went before me and showed me how it was done, to the white women who helped me open doors, um, and just all of our, as you said, all of our ancestors in the Caribbean, because we came through some times.
Yes, we did.
We came
Yes,
through
we
some
did.
times.
Yes, we did.
And so I am thankful to those people, because all of those, the education that I have, the education that let me go to university so that I could do a couple of shows, so I could get bitten by a bug, so I could hitchhike to Toronto, all of that is because of shoulders that I stand on and things that people did long before I suddenly went, hey, I would like to be an actor.
Incredible. All of this. All of it is incredible. So how excited are you that X-Men is back? I know I'm excited. I'm over the moon.
I love it. I love it. I think it's absolutely extraordinary that I get a chance to do this again. I mean, it's a new series. But you call on so much that you know. I mean, you've seen the first couple of episodes. So you know that it is a continuation with
Mhm.
brand new stories and all of that. It is one of the most exciting things to happen. And the fact that it happens, and it happens now, it's just beautiful, and it's happening at just the right time. It's happening when I don't have anything to prove.
Yeah.
I did it. I don't have to prove that a girl from Barbados can act. I know I can. I don't have to do it for the money to, raise my children on my own. They grown, they doing their own thing. I don't need this project. I need nothing about it. So I am able to be completely open and trusting in, and have so much fun
Fun.
in the studio, because it's me and a good script and a good team and a microphone, and it's cool.
That's so cool. I'm getting goosebumps. Oh man. I do have to ask because this scene had me tearing up. She was shot with one of the sentinel arm rays and she says the breeze is gone. How was that as a voice actress? You've played this character for so long, seeing that pivotal moment. How did you invoke those feelings? Because on screen she's distraught. I was distraught. How do you do this?
I'm an actor. This is what I
Yeah, I do. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
this is what I do. This is what I'm paid for. This is what I do. I can't cook, can't perform surgery. Really lousy carpenter. Um, but I am an actor, and so what you just described is exactly what is in my job description to do.
It was just such a uh, I guess seeing that, I guess when the audience, I mean, yes, it's in the comics, so some of us know what was going to happen, but knowing that it's going to happen and then seeing it on screen, it's two different things. So I guess maybe I didn't phrase the question. When you were acting that moment, how did you feel? Like, was it a weird feeling, seeing the character and her whole arc and knowing what happens? Or were you more of, I know what happens, but I know what else comes from her as well?
I am at the lucky place and where I no longer project ahead, and I don't
Mm,
look back. I have
mhm.
finally reached that place as an actor where, they say Uta Hagen says, um, is she the one? Anyway, acting is actually reacting. Acting is reacting.
Dang.
And they keep telling you about live in the moment. Don't think about what is going to happen in the future. Don't think about that. Think about what is happening in the future. And I have no idea what it is like to lose superpowers. I don't know what it is like to no longer be able to feel every little breeze
Yeah.
because I am the weather witch. I don't know what that feels like, but I have lost.
Yeah.
Everyone has lost.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of what I bring to this version of Storm is, of course, 30 more years of life, 30 more years of happiness and success and pain and grief and doubt and all of that. You bring it to the role. And so, what was I feeling? I was feeling whatever it is that a human would feel when something that they have taken for granted, something that is an integral part of their identity, is suddenly gone. And what you do is you tap into your body to try to find that sense of huge loss. And then you hope like hell that it translates into your voice.
Oh, it translated. Oh, it translated. Yeah. Wow. Wow. I'm telling you, that scene, my friends, we were talking about it. We're like, did you cry? Because I was crying. All of us were checking on each other, like, are you okay? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Wow. Wow.
Okay.
That's
Are we soon done? Are we soon done?
yeah,
We
yeah,
listen. We
listen
over.
there.
We over. We over.
One more question. And we're done. Mobby, sorrow, or ginger beer?
Sorrow.
I knew
Without
you
a
would say
doubt.
that. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so
Without a
much. It
doubt.
was a
Sorrow. Love sorrow.
pleasure. It was a pleasure to speak to you. I've learned so much. I've learned so much. Thank you.